I would go from being a janitor to being a janitor. I'll go maybe be janitor-in-chief, president of the janitors, king of the janitors. Nah, I think I'll stick with Frito-Lay. We'll have a real future. Better the devil you know than the devil you don't. Hey, Vacho.
Don't be stupid, no. They don't believe you or care about you.
And you do? All that ever comes out of your mouth is what an idiot I am. You expect me to trust you when you say God believes in me?
You respect me in front of my company.
Respect you! Hey, check it out, Pastor. I bet you didn't know that he beat the out of me my whole life. But it doesn't bother me because I got thick skin and a hard skull. You know what really sucks about is that I hear your voice in my head beating my brain every day. And for some reason, that's the beating I can't get up from.
It is Richard Montañez's first day at Frito-Lay, and he already looks overdressed for war. The plant manager, Lonnie, gives the formally dressed new janitor a tour through the company's main pit, showing him the machines, the noise, the moving parts, and the duties waiting for him. But Richard is not just happy to have the job. He is hooked. To everyone else, this is a factory floor. To him, it feels like a whole new world of gears, noise, and possibility. Back home, his wife, Judy, could not be prouder. For the first time in a long time, her husband has a real grown-up job. The next day, Richard starts strong, power washing the inside of an industrial mixing tank like the job is an amusement park ride. But cleaning is not enough for him. He wants to understand how everything works. So he tries charming information out of Wade Carson, a machine operator several ranks above him, asking how cornmeal turns into Cheetos inside the machines. Wade just scoffs at the lowly janitor and tells him to flirt with his mop instead. Richard would love to introduce Wade's arrogant ass to that same mop, but it is only his second day, and he cannot afford to get fired. So, Richard sets his eyes on Clarence C. Baker, the most experienced engineer in the building.
Pleasure to meet you, hermano. Hey, what's the C stand for?
Charisma.
But when Richard asks to see a machine blueprint, Clarence's face hardens immediately. Tony steps in and drags Richard away before Clarence can start questioning the new janitor's motives. At lunch, Tony breaks down the real rules of Frito-Lay. The plant managers sit at the top with the salaries, retirement plans, and job security. Below them are floor managers like Lonnie. Below them are respected machine operators like Wade and Clarence. And at the very bottom are janitors like Tony and Richard. Basically, the bitches of the factory. So Tony warns him to stay in his lane. One wrong move with the higher-ups, and Richard goes right back to being the jobless hoodlum everyone already expects him to be.
Guys like you can't be talking to a guy like Clarence, because we don't break rank around here. ¿Entiendes? It's about respect. And guys like you and me, we don't get shots like this. So don't blow it, because I'm not going back to that life, carnal. Are you?
That evening, Richard and Judy are back at his parents' house, where his father, Vacho, makes it clear he is still not impressed. To him, a janitor job is barely a victory, especially when that is the best his son could manage.
It's a job. Provide for my family.
Yeah, for how long? Until you change your insides, you're going to keep making the same mistakes. You can't spend the rest of your life scrubbing floors and cleaning up after people.
Coming from Vacho, the insult cuts deeper because Richard has spent his whole life being made to feel small by the same man. Richard would never admit it out loud, but deep down, the words land because he knows he cannot stay at the bottom forever. Sooner or later, he wants to climb past the mops, past the machines, past the men who look down on him, all the way towards someone like Roger Enrico, the glorious CEO of PepsiCo, the company sitting above Frito-Lay, and everything Richard can barely even imagine reaching. So the next day at lunch, Richard makes his first real move upward. He brings Clarence a plate of asada with spicy salsa, and Clarence accepts it like it might explode in his hand. He tells the pesky janitor to get to the point, so Richard starts yapping about how his father taught him a little machine repair when he was young. Now he wants to learn from Clarence, because around Frito-Lay, Clarence is the best of the best. At first, Clarence is annoyed, but Richard's hunger is too honest to ignore. Soon, the old engineer lets him sit down and share lunch. Across the room, Tony and the other janitors watch with their jaws kissing the floor, because Richard has just walked straight through a wall none of them were supposed to touch. From there, Clarence takes him under his wing for real. Wade tries making life difficult for the new janitor who refuses to know his place, but Clarence has Richard's back. And Clarence is not just experienced. The man is so locked into the factory that he can stand still, listen to the machines, and tell what is wrong just from the sound. He promises Richard that by the time he is done with him, he will be able to do the same. So Richard builds a new routine. He clocks in early, leaves later than everyone else, and spends every extra hour learning whatever Clarence is willing to teach him. The hunger pays off, and Richard even earns Employee of the Month. But right when his future finally starts looking possible, the economy goes straight to hell after President Reagan rises to the White House. Layoffs, fewer shifts, and employment crises spread everywhere. 8 years flash by, and Richard is not rising at all. He is worse off than before, forced to live on government food stamps with his family, humiliated by the same poverty he has spent years trying to outrun. Even though he qualified as an expert machine operative long ago, the promotion never comes. Meanwhile, far away at PepsiCo headquarters, Roger Enrico sits surrounded by executives as sales keep dropping. Everyone agrees the numbers are bad, but nobody has a real solution, leaving Enrico alone with the weight of a company that is losing momentum. To steady the ship, Enrico broadcasts a heart-to-heart pep talk to employees across the company. Most workers hear boring corporate noise and tune out. Richard does not. He listens like the CEO is speaking directly through the screen to him, telling him to stop thinking like a man trapped at the bottom and start thinking like a CEO if he ever wants to make a difference.
Yeah, you with the broom. You see anyone else watching?
Me?
Show the world what a janitor can do. Every person can be the difference between failure and success. I want you to think like a CEO.
Think like a CEO.
A few days later, that message hits Richard even harder when Lucky comes home from school with a black eye. Steven explains that his brother is being bullied for being Mexican. Richard is disappointed, but what hurts more is seeing the same shame people once forced onto him now growing inside his son. He tries to tell Lucky not to hate who he is, because that shame is exactly what makes people think they can break him.
They know that superpower, like Superman.
I ain't for no more, Dad. Plus, no one craps on Superman like they crap on us.
Instead of going home right away, Richard takes both boys to the park and buys them spicy corn. While they eat, he notices something that has been in front of him his whole life. Every Latino in the park is loading their food with big, bold, spicy condiments. That is when the eureka moment smacks him in the face. PepsiCo has shelves full of snacks, but none of them taste like the people Richard knows. So, right there, he decides to invent a new flavor for Cheetos, Fritos, and Doritos himself with his family from home. When they get back, Judy sees Lucky's black eye and freaks out, but Lucky is already over it after the corn stick therapy session with his father and brother. Then, Steven reveals Richard's big plan, and Judy freaks out all over again. Her husband has been stuck in the same job for almost a decade, and now he wants to spend time and money chasing some wild snack idea from the park. Still, Judy agrees to play along, but only after Richard promises to meet Vacho soon, because his father claims he found him a better job. At Frito-Lay, Clarence is not exactly thrilled by Richard's insane plan either, but he eventually agrees because in this economy, they are all sitting ducks waiting to get fired anyway. Tony and another janitor join in too, helping Richard collect discarded Cheetos from the production line in plastic garbage bags. Outside the factory, Tony hands over the last bag, then drives off to sell drugs around town. Tony came from the same streets Richard fought to escape, but with his mother's cancer bills piling up and the janitor job no longer covering enough, old habits start looking useful again.
We were all gonna do whatever it takes to take care of our families.
The next day, Richard sits down with Judy and Vacho to hear about this so-called better opportunity. And the big upgrade turns out to be another janitor job at another company, with the faint hope of becoming senior janitor within a year. Richard has no interest in switching buildings just to become the king of janitors somewhere else. Vacho takes that as disrespect, and the argument detonates. Richard finally throws the truth back in his father's face, calling out all the beatings, all the insults, and every time Vacho crushed his confidence instead of raising him up. Vacho refuses to sit there and take it. He pushes Richard and fires back that his son is so pathetic, even his wife has to look for help behind his back. That is when Judy explodes. She yells at Vacho for twisting her words and makes it clear she has never lost faith in Richard, not once. The screaming finally burns itself out, and Richard leaves with his wife beside him, no longer carrying the lie that Judy sees him the way his father does. On the way home, Richard and Judy raid the department store shelves for every spice they can find, and the Montañez kitchen turns into a full-blown flavor lab. At the same time, PepsiCo's professional team in the Midwest is running its own spicy flavor experiments with chemicals, test tubes, and all the educated pro stuff. But Richard's version comes from somewhere they cannot measure in a lab. His ingredients come from the heart of the earth, the food he grew up with, and the people PepsiCo has been ignoring. After dozens of disgusting failures, Richard and his family finally create a spicy seasoning that works on Cheetos, Fritos, and Doritos. The result is Flamin Hot.
Burns good or burns bad?
It burns good.
The next day, Richard takes it to work and begs Lonnie to call Enrico so he can pitch the product, but Lonnie crushes the dream immediately. New products take years, he says, and they definitely do not come from some uneducated janitor with a gangster background.
Oh, you just want me to call Enrico?
Yeah.
And just tell him, oh, our janitor, the guy who cleans the toilets, he's got a bright idea. It ain't like that, okay? New products take years to develop, and they do not get created by blue-collar hoodlums. Probably can't spell the word hoodlum.
So Richard stops waiting for permission. When nobody is watching, he copies Enrico's number from the company phone book, slips into the janitor's shared office, and calls PepsiCo headquarters himself. Enrico's secretary, Patty, is shocked that a lowly janitor wants to speak to the CEO, especially when even presidents and plant managers barely get that kind of access. But Richard's sincerity gets through to her, and she patches him in. Next thing he knows, Richard is speaking to Roger Enrico himself. The same honesty that moved Patty works on Enrico too. Richard tells him he heard the speech, took it seriously, and started thinking like a CEO.
You saw my video?
Yes, sir.
You're a janitor.
Maintenance crew, sir. Look, if it's okay, I'd like to send you some samples, sir.
Enrico is surprised enough to listen, and by the end of the call, he agrees to try a sample of Richard's homemade product. That evening, Richard and Judy rush to mail the samples through a local courier. But before sending them off, Richard stops and spends 5 full minutes praying to God, asking for mercy over the life he barely escaped and grace for whatever future might still be waiting for him. The package reaches Enrico without a problem, and when the CEO finally tastes Richard's homemade chili seasoning, one thing becomes clear. The janitor was not bluffing. This thing is Flamin Hot. Next thing you know, the big bad of PepsiCo himself is coming to Frito-Lay in 2 weeks. The whole factory loses its mind, especially Lonnie, who is furious that a janitor bypassed every chain of command and went straight to the CEO. And the danger is bigger than Richard's ego now. If Roger Enrico shows up, hates what he sees, or decides this plant is more trouble than it is worth, he can shut the whole place down with one snap of his fingers. Janitors, machine operators, managers, executives, everyone's job is suddenly tied to Richard's gamble. That is when the weight finally hits him. He did not just risk himself. He dragged the entire factory into the fire with him. Richard is so terrified he even starts thinking about how to cancel the visit, but Judy refuses to let him run from the chance he begged for. She tells him to stop drowning in doubt and finish what he started. Then she drags him to the public library where Richard spends the next half-month buried in Business Proposal 101 guides and whatever else might keep him from embarrassing himself in front of the most powerful man in the company. If you want to survive this crazy world, get yourself a Judy, fellas. At work, Clarence gives him one final piece of advice. When he stands in that room, he needs to say with his chest that the Hispanic market will not be ignored. The big day finally arrives, and Richard has another problem. It is his first time dressing in a suit, and neither he nor Judy knows how to tie a tie. But guess who does? His estranged father, Vacho Montañez. Judy sees the moment for what it is and suggests Richard use it to make peace. He does not want to, but he goes. Not long after, Vacho is standing in front of him, carefully looping the tie around his son's neck. And while his hands work, the old man finally says what Richard has needed to hear his whole life. He is proud of the brilliant man Richard has become. Even more than that, he apologizes for every time he made his son feel worthless instead of helping him stand tall. The words hit Richard harder than any beating ever did. He breaks down, barely able to answer, because the father who spent years crushing him is finally helping him walk into the biggest room of his life. At the factory, Lonnie tries to take Enrico on a quality check tour, but Enrico has zero interest in boring corporate theater. Richard pushes through the crowd of curious workers, and just like that, the presentation begins. It is not exactly polished. Richard barely understands half the business terms, keeps dropping gangster slang into the pitch, and looks like a man learning corporate language in real time.
If we knew that there was a product out there for us, we'd say, take all our money, cabrones!
But what wins Enrico over is not the Polish. It is the honesty. Richard may not know business economics, but he knows his people. He explains that Hispanics are always searching for the flavors they grew up with, the tastes that whisper of home, in everything they buy off the shelf. The problem is that PepsiCo's snacks are too bland for that market. They do not speak to those customers yet. Richard's Flamin Hot chili seasoning does. James Finley, a chief marketing executive at PepsiCo, keeps trying to embarrass him throughout the pitch, and it is not hard to see why. James is the one overseeing the professional spicy flavor experiments in the Midwest, where the company has already poured plenty of money and resources.
And what about market share? How much would your product yield?
What the F is market share? That wasn't in the books? Or maybe it was. This much market share.
But Enrico still decides to take the leap. He orders Frito-Lay to produce 5,000 bags of Flamin Hot Cheetos for a trial run, with James half-bald Finley supervising the test. Weeks fly by, and the dream does not explode the way Richard imagined. Flamin' Hot Cheetos are not flying off the shelves. They are barely crawling. Hardly anyone is buying them, and Lonnie eventually has to beg James for one more week before the product gets killed. Richard reaches the end of his rope, staring down the collapse of everything he risked, but Clarence snaps him out of it, telling him to pull his shit together and frickin' do something while there is still time. That night, Lucky figures out what everyone else missed. The product is not failing because people hate it. It is failing because people do not even know it exists. Half-bald Finley has not spent a single dime on television ads, newspaper ads, or any real promotion. The snack is sitting on shelves with no voice, no push, and no way to reach the exact people Richard made it for. So Richard rises again. The next day, he goes to Tony's doorstep and convinces him and the homies to help, promising that if this works, he can help win everybody's jobs back. Soon, Richard is leading the crew into the Frito-Lay compound, all gangster style. He climbs onto a platform while Tony and the others round up the workers. Lonnie starts yapping about rules, but one death stare from Tony shuts that down fast.
Back up. Not today, okay, Lonnie? Not today.
Yeah, I was backing up.
With everyone watching, Richard lays it out. The product is not moving, and if it stays that way, Frito-Lay shuts down in a week. Nobody keeps their job, so they can either sit around waiting to be fired, or they can grab boxes of unsold Flamin' Hot Cheetos and start handing them out for free to the Latinos who were supposed to know about them from the beginning.
I ain't got no fancy degrees. None of us do. Because people like us, like you and me, we're what makes this whole thing run. Let's show them that we won't be buried.
The workers are stunned, and Wade Carson immediately insults Richard for trying to drag them into more trouble. But Clarence steps in with that authoritative voice, gives everyone the push they need, and suddenly, the factory moves. Workers start loading boxes. Lonnie grabs one too, climbs into a lowrider, and gets ready to distribute spicy madness across town for free. Vacho proudly gives away the product his son created to anyone who will take it. Lucky and Steven hand out bags at the park. Meanwhile, Richard and Judy give a pack each to an elderly couple. FYI, those are the real-life Mr. and Mrs. Montañez of the Flamin' Hot brand. By the end of the week, Enrico is impressed and confused by the insane sales numbers coming out of Southern California. James Finley is even more shaken, because how the hell are Flamin' Hot Cheetos getting this much love from customers with zero marketing budget from Captain Half-Bald, full jealous himself? But it is already over. Nothing James says can change Enrico's mind now. The CEO sees the truth clearly. The Hispanic market is the future of PepsiCo, and Richard is the chosen one to lead them into it. Soon, Richard gets a call from Enrico himself. The CEO places another order for Flamin' Hot Cheetos, except this time, it is not 5,000 bags.
We're gonna need 5 million.
You're not playing, are you?
No, Richard.
Yes, sir. Right away, sir.
Richard fists the air in celebration, and before long, every conveyor belt at Frito-Lay is pumping out endless waves of spicy red Cheetos. 6 months later, Tony and the others have their jobs back, and Flamin' Hot products are selling Flamin' Hot across the market. Against all expectations, though, Richard has not heard a word from Enrico or anyone else. No massive reward, no bonus, no credit, not even a promotion to machine operator. Then, one day, Clarence appears and reveals he has been appointed the new plant manager of Bakersfield, another PepsiCo company around the same scale as Frito-Lay. Richard is genuinely happy for his mentor, but the moment is cut short when Lonnie yells for him to get upstairs and clean a few rooms.
I'm not gonna do anything until I get an interview for the machinist gig.
You're on the clock. Just do the job you got, and I'll see what I can do, please.
Richard swallows the bitterness and goes, only to be ambushed upstairs by Roger Enrico. Turns out Richard was not sent there to clean a room. He was sent there to occupy one, as the new director of multicultural marketing at Frito-Lay.
Wow, for real?
Richie! Let's go to gym!
Lonnie, who had only been messing with him, now stands below with Tony, Clarence, and the rest of the workers, smiling and cheering for the new marketing director. Meanwhile, Judy is still stacking clothes at a Target warehouse when Richard calls her.
We're gonna need more ties.
That is all he says, but it is enough. Judy breaks down, and so does Richard, because after everything they survived together, those few words say the dream finally reached them both. Years later, Richard and Judy walk out of a luxurious restaurant as a couple. Richard generously tips both the waiter and the cook, then rides away in a car with Flamin Hot on the license plate. From rags to riches, this is the story of Richard Montañez, the man history fondly remembered as the godfather of Latino marketing. Richard retired decades later in 2019, and through thick and thin, he and Judy Montañez have remained married for 5 decades. A wholesome story, right? Except not everything adds up. In 2021, the Los Angeles Times rigorously investigated the wildly popular Flamin Hot origin story. Their conclusion? Richard Montañez is one hell of an unreliable narrator. Did he really go from janitor to executive at Frito-Lay? Yes. Is he a Hispanic marketing genius? Indeed. But according to the reports, that is where the fairy tale starts cracking, because Flamin Hot was supposedly created by professionals in a lab instead. Unsurprisingly, Richard later sued PepsiCo for denying him credit in the innovation process, but to no avail. So, who is the real fraud here? And who is telling the truth? Let me know in the comments. And as always, thanks for watching.
Like, I know I don't look it, but I promise I'll be the best worker you ever hired. Look, maybe I don't got no diploma, but I got a PhD. I'm poor, hungry, and determined, sir.